Attention everybody, the Overwatch World Cup is returning for 2023. What do I have on? I have on my jersey from 2018. It's probably a size or two too small now. It barely fits. I also have my jersey from 2019. If you look back, there was just some incredible sponsors. And when I say incredible, I mean, let's put our sponsor name in front of the jersey kind of thing. I didn't like this jersey. I don't know how my color correction is on the camera, but this is not red. Canada is, our flag is obviously looking like that. And it's supposed to be red, but this is orange. So whoever printed the jersey that year was probably a little colorblind. This one was okay, but honestly, these jersey designs left something to be desired. But anyways, let's go through the article. They announced it today, and I'll give you some stories and anecdotes from my experience in the 2018 and 2019 World Cup, and my experience of being a community lead and what it entails. Going down the article, Overwatch World Cup returns in 2023, announced December 17th in 2022. Attention world. After 3 years away, we are thrilled to announce that the Overwatch World Cup is returning for 2023. They say 3 years away, but the last one was 2019 November. And if we scroll down, this is going to be in the fall of 2023. It's going to be 4 years. 4 years since the last competition. That's crazy. But it's back, bigger than ever. New game, new players, new way to spotlight your country and region on a global scale. They'll reveal more additional programs as they're ready, but here's the big picture. Okay, in January, so next month, we'll announce the 36 countries and regions. Wow, that's actually quite a bit. Competing in the 2023 World Cup, and that's when the competition committee applications will open. Each competition committee will be responsible for organizing tryouts for their country and region following Blizzard guidelines. Alongside the regular tryouts, we're introducing a new avenue for players to compete for a spot on their team. This comes in the form of an open tournament format, World Cup trials. So in February, so January, that's going to be committee, and they'll announce the countries. In February, the World Cup trial competitions will earn winning players a direct spot in the tryouts for their team. Regular tryouts will have a competitive rank requirement of diamond and above. So aspiring players should start climbing the ladder now. Okay, they say this, but there's no way in hell a modern 2023 World Cup rank requirement is going to be diamond. You're going to have to be at least GM1 to be competitive. There's like no way. But they just make that as a baseline for maybe a really, maybe a country that doesn't have a large player pool, but they're not going to be able to like make it through the first round. But that's okay, like as long as you're trying. But if for main countries like Team Canada, US, Korea, yeah, there's no way a diamond player is going to make it. But they could still try out, I suppose. But I'm going to be completely honest, because it seems like the committee, because we're going to be responsible for organizing tryouts. I hate to say it, but it would just kind of just be a waste of time if the competition is that heavy. Like, yes, you may have like a sharp mind in diamond, but you're going to fall behind mechanically. In 2023, we'll offer some challenges and rewards for players to help celebrate. Okay, so this is just cosmetics, probably. In June, after team rosters are finalized, Overwatch World Cup qualifiers are planned to take place through regional online competition. So you narrow down the 36 teams to 16, but you drop 20 teams for the next phase. Then those 16 teams will battle it out in a LAN environment in the fall of 2023 to determine our first World Cup champion since 2019. This might be BlizzCon, unless they host it in a separate event. The previous two World Cups that I was in, 2018, 2019, it was done at the Anaheim Convention Center in conjunction with BlizzCon, and it was always a big pull. I think it was a great spectator. Like BlizzCon as a con is a nice event, but like when the World Cup is going on, it's nice to head into that stage and sit down wherever you want and watch. Some people who went to the con can probably attest to how great of an experience BlizzCon was strictly because of the World Cup. Whether you're a pro, aspiring pro, or a casual player, there are a ton of ways to get involved. Stay tuned for further announcements, including details about each stage in the 2023 World Cup, viewer information, and much more. So here's a timeline picture of how it's going to go. So they announce it now. We're in December 2022. Next month, January, they'll select the 36 countries and regions competing. And then this is where the committee can apply for committee positions. Candidates can apply for positions, and they're vetted by Blizzard. They didn't say exactly what committee positions they are, but when I was in the 2018-2019, I applied to be the community lead, and I got the role for both those years. So there was 3 roles you could apply for. It was general manager, community lead, and head coach. 3 official positions vetted by Blizzard, in which Blizzard would provide resources like, you know, the flights, hotels, and everything. So general manager, coach, and community lead. In 2018, the jersey I'm wearing right now, Our head coach at that time was Jane. Miss you, Jane. Our general manager was ID. His name was ID, Andrew Truly. He used to actually, in early 2016, he was on Team Liquid. He was a Quake player and an Overwatch player. And then me as a community lead in 2018. Our roster at the time, we'll pull up the picture right now. The roster at the time in the tank role, we had, of course, XQC. We had Note. On DPS, we had Mangachu, Sure4, Agilities. And for support, we had Vanny. In the 2019 Overwatch World Cup, I'm not going to put this jersey on. It was, for the most part, I believe the same roster, although we had some switches. Jane was no longer the head coach. Jane moved to general manager, and we had a new coach, Tickety, who was actually coach for the Dallas Fuel at the time. Myself, again, as a community lead, so us three on the committee. And then our roster that year was, for the most part, I think it was actually similar. I think we had XQC Note, we had Mangachu, Sure4, Agilities, and we had Crimzo and Banny. These were the members that they would fly out. So you could only fly out 6 players because Overwatch was a 6v6 plus 1 sub, which was, we had 3 DPS players, Mangachu, Sure4, and Agilities. So they would like rotate in. Technically, when you announce your roster for the World Cup, back in the day, you were able to announce 12 members. If we pull up the old images right now, we announced our 12 members at the time. This was the 2018 roster that we curated at the time, and this was the 2019 roster of all 12 players. But again, we could only pick 7, so like honestly the last 5 names that were on the roster were just basically backup emergency subs, worst case scenario. But they didn't even get a ticket to BlizzCon, which kind of sucked if you're gonna like make us announce 12 people. I think this year, if we have a 5v5 format, it might be 2 substitutes or maybe 1 sub for each role. If it were up to me, I would say you should probably announce a 5-man roster and then add a sub for tank, DPS, and support. So 3 extra spots for an 8-spot roster. Fly those 8 people out plus the 3 committee people, 11 people. That's just my take on it, because it kind of feels like when we announced those extra 12 players or 5 players to make it 12 at the time, like it was more of a formality, but then they didn't get any. There's nothing. There's no time to like put them in scrims. Like, what was the point if you know, we had 6 players plus 1? Like, they're the ones who need to get to practice. They're the one that's gonna play. The only way they would sub is like a complete shift in hero pool, perhaps, or someone gets like diarrhea or something. But even in that case, so here's a funny story. When I signed that 2018-2019 contract as a committee member, community lead, it actually had a place on it where it said I could be an emergency sub on stage if something like were to happen. Like, obviously we have 7 players, the extra sub would be fine, but let's say like 3 of our players had like, you know, terrible diarrhea or food poisoning the night before. On stage day, they need to play the match. It would actually have to be like me, Jane, Tickety, or ID having to hop on the stage and sub in. So that would be the only opportunity that I would play, or my other committee members would. So luckily nothing of that nature ever happened, but I thought that was just funny. When I signed the contract, I was like, whoa. That's January for the committee stuff. February, the open tournament to earn a guaranteed spot for the country and regional team tryout. So I remember back in the day, to get your country to qualify, I think there needed to be like an average or minimum SR skill rating of your entire country's players at the time. So if your entire country had like an average SR, like all the players on a battle net that have their region set to whatever country, they'll average out all the SR of people above a certain, or I can't remember if it was the whole country, but there was a threshold. So some countries didn't make the cut, which I don't know if it was a fair thing, because there's some really talented players from some countries that, you know, don't have a huge Overwatch player population, but they were like a 4600, or in this case modern day GM1 top 500 player, but like obviously the average player in the country wasn't as high. They would not be able to make the World Cup. But this is like a country, like this is competing for your country, so understandably they can't make it if like the entire roster wasn't competitive in that nature. But it does kind of suck that some players would kind of get isolated out in that capacity. So hopefully they do something different. So now instead of having an average SR, it says there's an open tournament to earn a spot for the country. So the country has to pop off and earn their spot. So it feels like you have to curate your roster pretty damn early then. The committee will also be announced. So you apply in January if you want to be one of the 3 committee members. Team tryouts will be in March. So this is kind of weird how the open tournament to earn a spot for your country, you kind of need to pull in your best players unofficially, I suppose, to at least compete for a spot if you haven't been in the World Cup before. And then you do tryouts later. Team selection. So the competition committee selects the country and regional team from the tryouts. Blizzard ensures competitive integrity of a selection process. So Blizzard will vet all the committee members and the roster people that you guys select in March. And then 3 months of nothing, March all the way to June, we have the 36 countries competing in 6 regional qualifiers, and the top 16 will go to the World Cup group stage in the fall of 2023. They don't give a date. Fall would be what, September, October, November, right? So I really do think this might be during BlizzCon. Maybe the plans may change, but I think tentatively, if we go on what they've done in the history book, it's probably going to be at BlizzCon. Top 16 countries and regional teams compete in a LAN round robin group stage. Top 8 teams advance, and then the top 8 country and regional teams compete in a single elimination bracket to determine the Overwatch World Cup medalist and world champion. They could separate this into a whole separate event if they want to monetize it a bit differently. I'm just saying historically they've done it at BlizzCon, but maybe they want to go bigger and better and have it like as a separate event, separate days booked at the Anaheim Convention Center, or they could host it in different regions. So I know in the previous years they had the group stages, like the Asian APAC region would compete. I think they did it in Thailand. And then they had like one in Europe, and then the one in LA in North America. I went to the one in the LA group stages, but I remember like hearing stories back in the day. I remember Team Australia went to Thailand and then they got like food poisoning or something like that. So we'll wait to hear more details, but this looks like the tentative schedule and how they plan on doing everything. I'm excited. Will I be signing up or applying for the committee again? I don't know. I was able to do it the past 2 years, and I think I'm okay, or not, I think I'm okay. I'm willing to just pass the torch onto the newer, younger talent. I don't believe any of the Overwatch 2 Team Canada players from previous years are actively playing, except for Surefour, and I've seen Mangachu and Ladder. XQC is probably too busy now with his stream thing, and like, you know, he hasn't really like refined his Overwatch 2 talent. Not to say he doesn't have the capacity to if he really wanted to grind for this again. I do think it's time to pass the torch on to the newer, younger talent in Team Canada. For the committee stuff for myself, I don't think I'm going to be applying, but I do want to be part of it in some capacity. So like, whoever's applying for the committee, if you're listening to this, you can come DM me and I'll give you some information on what I had to go through, what the role kind of entailed. Or I'll just tell you right now, just really roughly, as a community lead at the time, it was mostly just social media handling, marketing the players, doing some fun pieces of content. If you go down to Team Canada Twitter, there's a couple of fun memes, some little behind the scenes stuff that I did. And then also like getting help, you know? There's a lot of people that are willing and hungry to help contribute to their country's success, like community social media managers who are helping me out with some of the socials too. So shout out to Kyle, shout out to for the graphics, shout out to Vortex and all the others who assisted me during that time. It was also trying to negotiate with sponsors and figure out what we could do to help amplify the team. So I was part of the Toronto Defiant at the time, and I still am. I was able to speak with them, and we were able to fly the entire Team Canada team here in Toronto at the Bell 5 House at the time. It no longer exists anymore. We have a lot of fun little footage, like the fire alarm going off. We had all the players here for a couple of days to boot camp, try out, practice, and it was honestly such a good time with all the boys. Played a lot of ping pong, had a little fun little tournament, and that's what I did as a community lead. Not every team does it the same way, but that's just, you know, we had really marketable players on Team Canada, so it made a lot of sense, and we had the funds and money and the resources, like my connection with the Toronto Defiant and Overactive Media to help assist that. Not everybody will have that, but that is just something to think about. You do everything in your power as a community lead to community. It's community, social media, bring people in to get excited for your team. We didn't perform as well in 2019, but we did get bronze in 2018. But yeah, anyways, I'm excited for the Overwatch World Cup. Hope you are as well. If you were curious about anything, I'll hopefully answer some comment questions about, you know, the World Cup and what it is, more details, more things to help you out. Let me know. Thank you. Peace.